Our next story is from Algeria. It is Africa's largest country by area, home to about 47 million people and a major oil and natural gas exporter. Algeria just held its presidential election. It took place on Saturday. There were three candidates in the race, one of them being the incumbent. That's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. The election results are in, and the 78-year-old Tebboune has won the second term. In fact, he won with a whopping 95% of the vote. He will now go on to serve another 5 years in office. Now let's pause here for a second. Just think about what I said. Algeria's 78-year-old president just won 95% of the vote. 95%. Does that strike you as a little odd? How does someone become that popular? For context, let's look at the recent Russian election, which was held in March this year. Vladimir Putin won that election. He was expected to win. He won with about 88% of the vote. Now let that sink in. Even Putin did not cross the 90% threshold. But Tebboune somehow managed almost 95%. How did that happen?
You know, over there's not much choice. Either you submit or you keep quiet. Silence, or you go to prison, or you go into exile. There aren't many other choices.
That's a bleak assessment, but accurate. Only 3 candidates finally took part in the election, but a lot more had wanted to contest. More than 24 candidates were disqualified or forced to resign. There were barriers to contesting, and the election dates were brought forward, all to benefit the incumbent. Now, does any of this seem fair to you? It did not to Algerians either. The voter turnout is telling. When the results were announced, about 5.6 million votes had been tallied. Algeria's electorate is 24 million strong, which means the voter turnout was just around 23%. So less than a quarter of registered voters went to cast their ballots. That doesn't really show the election in a good light, does it? Basically, the people knew that it was a sham. They decided to not waste their time. Now, after hearing all of this, how do you think the world reacted, especially the Western world, the so-called champions of democracy and all that jazz? Let's look at the United States. Washington is always quick to condemn dubious elections, after all. This was the U.S. State Department's reaction to Putin's victory in March. They said Russia's presidential election occurred in an environment, and I'm quoting, an environment of intense repression. They said the election, and I'm quoting again, could only be described as undemocratic. Strong words for Russia. Same with Venezuela. When Maduro won the presidential election in July, the US said that the election was deeply flawed and that the official results did not have any credibility. So how has the United States reacted to the Algerian election? Well, here's their statement, short and sweet. The US congratulated Algeria. They said that they were looking forward to further cooperation and reiterated that Algeria was a valued partner. That's it. No sermons, no pointing out any flaws, nothing. Europe has also been suspiciously quiet. France has congratulated Tebboune on a second term. But the rest of Europe seems to be intentionally ignoring the result. Why is that? Why can't the West say anything right now? Well, it's because Algeria is a valuable ally to them. Algiers helps Europe with 2 crucial matters: fuel and migration. Algeria is now Europe's second largest gas supplier. This has happened in the last 2 years, since Russia invaded Ukraine. Europe needed an alternative for Russian gas, so they tied up with Algeria. Now they have to keep their mouth shut or risk another fuel crisis. So that's the first reason why they won't say anything to Algeria. The second reason is migration. Europe is facing a migrant overload. Thousands try to enter Europe illegally every year, often by crossing the Mediterranean Sea. Their point of departure is usually North Africa, or countries like Algeria, neighboring Tunisia and Morocco. So Europe has been trying to get these countries to help stop the migration. It has signed deals with them and given millions in exchange for stopping the migrants. Basically, the North African nations are doing Europe's dirty work, acting like Europe's bouncers and stopping migrants from crossing into the Mediterranean. This gives countries like Algeria even more leverage. Europe knows that too many sermons could backfire. Algeria could open the floodgates. And that is why Europe is not saying anything, and why Big Brother America is actually cheering Algeria on. The West keeps pretending to be the champion of democracy, but they actually do not mind autocrats as long as the autocrat works for Western interests. Another classic case of Western hypocrisy.